Orders. Well, kind of interesting that this article conveniently drops on the day that Unrivaled starts its season on True TV at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. And let's be real, school went back in today across the country, pretty much. At least most of the schools I know here in Texas. It wasn't like people were still on Christmas break or are still on Christmas break. They just started the season. By the way, started the season on the NFL's Black Monday, where now 6 head coaches no longer have jobs and has completely taken over the sports news cycle. Sucked all the wind out of it. And trust me, I did a video the other day. There wasn't even any wind.
They launched their second season to empty seats, and their president just admitted they might need their biggest competitor to save them. While the entire sports world was focused on 6 NFL coaches getting fired on Black Monday, January 6, 2025, another professional sports league was quietly fighting for its life. Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 women's basketball league that raised millions in investor capital, tipped off what might be their final season on True TV at noon on a Monday. Not primetime, not weekend afternoon. Noon on a school day when their target audience was either working in class or completely distracted by the NFL coaching carousel dominating every sports outlet. And here's the kicker that nobody's talking about. The league's president, Alex Boesel, went on record with Front Office Sports saying nothing is off the table when it comes to partnering with the WNBA. That's not corporate synergy speak. That's a distress signal wrapped in professional language. That's a drowning company reaching for anything that floats.
Getting any fire at all. And you didn't start this on TNT. I just can't imagine. I mean, why wouldn't you, if you have to, just do prime time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? By the way, they're going up against WWE tonight. 1-year anniversary of Raw on Netflix. It's going to be a huge show. That's who you're going up against?
But here's where the timing gets absolutely brutal. Unrivaled isn't just competing with regular programming. They launched their season opener against WWE's 1-year anniversary of Monday Night Raw on Netflix, a massive event that's been promoted for weeks and was guaranteed to dominate social media engagement. They're getting buried under an avalanche of NFL coaching news that will control sports talk radio, ESPN, and every major sports podcast for the next week. And in the middle of this media chaos, they made a business decision that tells you everything about their current situation. They increased their arena capacity by exactly 150 seats, not 1,500, not 15,000, 150 people. When you're celebrating adding 150 seats to your venue in Miami, you're not projecting confidence or planning for growth. You're managing a crisis in slow motion while pretending everything's fine. You're trying to create the illusion of progress when you can't even fill the seats you already have.
NBA's help to stay afloat. That's on the table. They're in big trouble, folks. Year 2 tipped off Monday with 2 matinee games following an evening slate. It comes with a clear challenge, solidifying the startup 3-on-3 in an increasingly crowded women's basketball landscape.
Now let me take you back to where this all started, because understanding how we got here explains why everything's falling apart now. Unrivaled launched in early 2024 with what looked like genuine momentum and serious backing. They secured a Series B investment that valued the league at $340 million, which sounds impressive until you see their actual revenue numbers. They brought in legitimate WNBA stars, positioned themselves as the premier off-season destination for elite women's basketball players, and sold investors on a simple but compelling pitch. Get the best female basketball players in the world to play 3-on-3 basketball in Miami during the WNBA offseason, pay them 6 figures for 2 months of work, and create appointment television that keeps women's basketball in the spotlight year-round. On paper, this was brilliant. Napheesa Collier and Breanna Stewart, 2 of the biggest names in women's basketball and legitimate superstars, co-founded the league alongside businessmen who understood sports media. They brought instant credibility, established relationships with other elite players, and the kind of star power that opens doors with broadcasters and sponsors.
Is partnering with the WNBA its best bet? Question mark. Quote, I don't want to speak too much of what's going on behind the scenes, but I've made it very clear we're open to the ecosystem. I'm sure you are. Unrivaled President Alex Brazil said Monday, on the day the league's open, quote, which way that looks like, for us, there's nothing that's on the table or off the table. Nothing that's off the table is the key takeaway there. Brazil has been open about Unrivaled's efforts to work with the WNBA from the onset. In September, he told Front Office Sports that Unrivaled went to the WNBA early and was open to a formal partnership. The WNBA declined.
But here's where the fundamental problem became obvious immediately, and it's a problem that's now destroying their business model. The players want to play 5-on-5 basketball, not 3-on-3. Not a modified game designed to fit smaller venues and shorter schedules. The real game. Full-court, traditional basketball with all the complexity and strategy that makes the sport compelling. And the biggest star in women's basketball made that crystal clear without ever mentioning Unrivaled's name directly. Caitlin Clark, the player who single-handedly drove WNBA ratings to record levels in 2024, passed on Unrivaled completely. She didn't just decline quietly either. She made it publicly known through her representatives that her style of play, her court vision, her ability to create for teammates, doesn't translate to 3-on-3 basketball. Think about what that means for a league whose entire business model depends on star power driving viewership and social media engagement. When the biggest star in your sport, the player who brought mainstream attention to women's basketball, won't participate in your league, you don't have a marketing problem or a timing issue. You have a fundamental structural problem with the product itself.
Be honest. It's because of Project B, which is going to have this league in a damn bind. I mean, real fast. Quote, what you look at right now is there's a collaboration that's going on in NBA Europe. That was not a formal partnership before. As long as you can look at that space in an innovative lens, anything is doable, anything is possible. He's literally bringing up other examples of collaboration. By this time next year, Project B, the new traveling 5-on-5 league, plans to be up and running with a number of former and current Unrivaled players committed to play in the inaugural season, including Alyssa Thomas and Jewel Lloyd. Beyond that immediate threat, there's a longer-term one if the WNBA pursues exclusivity as a result of increased pay. Quote, they don't believe that's...
And get this, because it gets so much worse. Caitlin Clark isn't the only superstar who said no to Unrivaled. Aja Wilson, the two-time MVP and the face of the Las Vegas Aces, isn't playing in Unrivaled. Neither is Angel Reese, whose rivalry with Clark drove massive social media engagement and mainstream sports coverage throughout the entire 2024 WNBA season. Breanna, one of the most marketable and recognizable players in the WNBA, passed on joining the league. The 5 most recognizable faces in women's basketball, the players who drive ticket sales, jersey sales, and television ratings, are nowhere to be found in Unrivaled's second season. Now think about what that means for a league that generated $27 million in revenue during their inaugural season. That number sounds impressive in isolation, until you realize they're valued at $340 million by their investors. That's a revenue-to-valuation ratio that only works if you're projecting massive, exponential growth year over year. And how exactly do you project massive growth when you're losing the star power war to a competing league that hasn't even launched yet? How do you convince advertisers and broadcast partners to increase their investment when your biggest potential draws are sitting out or actively planning their exit strategy?
When that's coming, it's probably not coming in this CBA. But it does look like it's coming. That may be true, but there's a belief within WNBA circles that the league is still at least one collective bargaining agreement away from being able to offer salaries that warrant exclusivity. But for sustained success, Unrivaled needs to consider an increasingly crowded women's basketball ecosystem. Now, it goes on to talk about the great, and I do mean the GOAT, David Stern, coming out and talking about why the WNBA was created. It was created as a league opposite to the NBA, purposely, so people would have basketball to watch when the NBA wasn't playing. It goes on to talk about the fact that the Unrivaled's got all this new money. Well, it's just investment money. All right, Series B investment, valuing the league at $340 million. Following the inaugural season when the league banked more than $27 million in revenue, the league is trying to grow that number, selling more tickets in a small arena, increasing the capacity from 8.
Because here's the real threat that has unrivaled leadership reaching out to the WNBA for help, and it's not what most people think. Project B, a new 5-on-5 traveling league scheduled to launch by this time next year, has already secured commitments from current unrivaled players, not bench players or role players, stars, including Alyssa Thomas and Jewel Lloyd, who are currently playing an unrivaled second season while simultaneously committing to a competing league that doesn't even exist yet. Let that sink in. Your own players, the ones you're paying six figures to anchor your league, are publicly committing to jump ship to a rival organization that's still in development. That's not competition. That's an exodus in progress. That's your talent actively planning their escape while they're still cashing your checks. And Project B has something that Unrivaled can never offer, no matter how much money they raise or how many investors they bring in. They're playing the game that basketball players actually want to play. 5-on-5, full court, traditional basketball with all the strategy, teamwork, and individual skill expression that makes the sport compelling to both players and fans.
And there were, even in this little arena, there were empty seats. Very visible on the television screen. This league is in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. Breanna Stewart, co-founder, when talking about Project B, honestly, I don't know. Talking about, are they considered a competitor? Project B has a lot that's still in the works until they're on the ground running. No, that's no shade to them or anything. It's just different. We're playing 3-on-3 in one city. It's 5-on-5 all over the place. Yeah, but when you listen.
Now let's break down what Alex Boesel actually said to Front Office Sports, because the language matters and it reveals just how desperate things have become. He told them, quote, "I don't want to speak too much to what's going on behind the scenes, but I've made it very clear we're open to the ecosystem. Which way that looks like for us, there's nothing that's on the table or off the table. Nothing is off the table." That's not the language of a league negotiating from strength or exploring partnership opportunities from a position of power. That's the language of a drowning company that will take any deal, any arrangement, any lifeline that keeps them operational. And he didn't stop there. He brought up NBA Europe as an example of collaboration that worked without being a formal partnership, which is basically citing other leagues' survival strategies as potential models for Unrivaled's future. When you're looking at how other organizations avoided bankruptcy, you're not planning expansion. You're planning damage control.
Games, and I'm sure there may, I guess, maybe there's going to be some basketball fans that are going to all come together to try to flood those two matinees. But I'm guessing the ratings for those two games are going to be sub 100,000 viewers. Is that a success? And I'm talking sub 100,000, maybe with the new methodology that's artificially pumping all these numbers up. This was code word, like business code word for Adam Silver. You got your ears on? We're in the quicksand and we're tossing you. I got a little rope here. Or could you toss us a rope? Toss us a rope. We're going down. It is what it is. I mean, I think Project B is going to stomp this league right out of existence. And then we'll see. You know, you got to realize the NBA is working with NBA Europe. Okay. Well, I mean, Project B is an overseas league, and there's a lot of reputable people involved in that league. You know? Again, Unrivaled, no Sophie, no Asia, no Sabrina, no Caitlin, and no Angel. And if you gave that league truth serum, I bet you they would have told you 6 months ago, well, we'll have Sabrina Ionescu and Angel Reese. No, you won't.
Here's what makes this situation particularly fascinating from a business perspective, and it explains why the WNBA holds all the power in any potential partnership. Unrivaled went to the WNBA early in their development process and pitched a collaboration. They wanted official sanction, they wanted roster sharing agreements, they wanted the WNBA to help promote their league during the offseason. The WNBA said no. They declined to get involved with a 3-on-3 league that would compete for their players' time, energy, and attention during what's supposed to be their rest and recovery period. That was a completely reasonable business decision at the time. Why would the WNBA help build a competing product that could potentially drain talent or create scheduling conflicts? But now the situation has completely changed, and the power dynamic has shifted entirely in the WNBA's favor. The WNBA is currently negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement, and there are serious discussions about implementing exclusivity clauses that would prevent players from competing in other leagues during the offseason. That's not happening in the current CBA because, according to sources within WNBA circles, the league is still at least one contract cycle away from being able to offer salaries that would warrant exclusivity demands. But it's coming. The trajectory is clear, and everyone in women's basketball knows it. So here's the impossible position that Unrivaled finds itself in, and it explains why their president is publicly begging for partnership opportunities. They can't compete with Project B on the actual product because 5-on-5 will always be more appealing to basketball players than 3-on-3. It's not even close. They can't secure the biggest stars because those stars are either resting during the offseason, waiting to see which league offers the better long-term opportunity, or actively planning to join competing organizations. They're facing a future where the WNBA might implement exclusivity rules that would make off-season leagues illegal under player contracts, which would essentially kill their business model overnight. The only path forward is to become part of the WNBA ecosystem. Not a competitor, not an alternative, but a developmental league, a minor league system, or some kind of formally sanctioned off-season option that serves the WNBA's interests rather than competing with them. That's what nothing is off the table really means. It means we'll take whatever deal keeps us alive, even if it means giving up our independence and becoming a subsidiary of the league we originally wanted to compete with. And here's the thing about that season opener on Monday afternoon that should terrify every investor who put money into this league. The arena had visible empty seats in a venue that holds barely over 1,000 people. They couldn't sell out their season opener in Miami, a major market with a huge basketball fan base and perfect weather that should make attending games appealing. The social media engagement has been minimal compared to their first season. The buzz, the excitement, the sense of novelty that surrounded their inaugural year has completely evaporated. Front Office Sports opened their article about Unrivaled's second season with a sentence that should keep executives awake at night. The novelty of Unrivaled's inaugural season is gone. The novelty is gone after one season. That's devastating for a league that was supposed to build sustainable fan engagement and grow their audience year over year. Novelty was supposed to carry them through year two while they developed loyal viewers, established traditions, and created appointment television that people actually wanted to watch. But when you launch your second season at noon on a Monday against NFL Black Monday and WWE's Netflix anniversary, you're not trying to maximize viewership or create cultural moments. You're trying to fulfill contractual obligations to your broadcast partner while hoping nobody notices how bad the ratings are going to be. You're scheduling around everyone else instead of demanding prime real estate in the sports calendar. Think about the series of strategic decisions that led to this moment, because they reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of the market they're trying to serve. Unrivaled positioned itself as the premier off-season destination for elite women's basketball players, but they chose a format that the sport's biggest stars don't want to play. They secured massive investment based on projected growth and market expansion, but they're actively losing players to a league that doesn't even exist yet. They built a small, intimate arena in Miami to create an exclusive atmosphere and premium experience, but they can't fill the seats they have even for their season opener. They launched their second season at literally the worst possible time in the sports calendar, competing against the biggest news day in football and a major wrestling event that was guaranteed to dominate social media engagement. These aren't coincidences or bad luck. These are symptoms of a fundamental misunderstanding of what women's basketball players want and what fans are willing to watch. Women's basketball players want to play basketball, real basketball, 5-on-5 with all the strategy, teamwork, and individual expression that makes the sport compelling. And fans want to watch the stars they follow during the WNBA season, not lesser-known players competing in a modified format that doesn't showcase the skills that make women's basketball exciting. Unrivaled has neither the format nor the star power to build sustainable viewership, and they're running out of time to fix either problem. The investors who valued them at $340 million are watching their revenue stagnate, while competing leagues attract their talent, and their president publicly begs for partnership deals that would essentially end their independence. So what happens next? Alex Bozel's comments suggest they're in active discussions about becoming part of the WNBA infrastructure, which could take several different forms. Maybe that looks like a G League equivalent for women's basketball, where Unrivaled becomes the official developmental system with WNBA oversight and integration. Maybe it's a formal partnership where Unrivaled becomes the sanctioned off-season league with salary cap exceptions and roster rules that encourage WNBA teams to send their players there for additional development and conditioning. Maybe the WNBA acquires Unrivaled outright and converts it into a developmental system that serves their long-term competitive interests rather than competing with them for talent and attention. Or maybe Unrivaled simply folds after this season when their broadcast contract expires, and their investors realize that the women's basketball market isn't big enough to support multiple competing leagues with different formats and conflicting schedules. Watch what happens over the next few months, because this situation is about to get a lot more interesting. Watch whether the WNBA engages with Unrivaled's partnership overtures, or whether they let them twist in the wind while they negotiate their own expansion and growth plans. Watch whether Project B successfully launches with the star power that Unrivaled couldn't secure, and whether they can deliver on their promises of 5-on-5 basketball with legitimate television coverage and sustainable salaries. Watch whether Unrivaled makes it to a third season, and if they do, whether they're still playing 3-on-3 or whether they've abandoned the format that originally defined them in a desperate attempt to compete with Project B, because right now, with empty seats visible in their tiny Miami arena, with their biggest potential stars playing elsewhere or actively planning their exits, with a competing 5-on-5 league on the horizon that's already poaching their talent, and with their president publicly stating that nothing is off the table when it comes to partnerships, Unrivaled isn't projecting strength or confidence. They're projecting desperation. And in professional sports, once the scent of desperation is in the air, the vultures start circling. So here's what we're really looking at. A league that raised hundreds of millions in investment, secured television coverage, and attracted legitimate star power is now fighting for survival after just one season. They're losing the format war to a league that doesn't exist yet. They can't attract the biggest stars in their sport, and they're publicly begging their biggest competitor to save them through some kind of partnership deal. This isn't just about Unrivaled anymore. This is about whether the women's basketball market can support multiple competing leagues, whether 3-on-3 basketball has any sustainable future as a professional sport, and whether investors will continue funding experimental leagues that can't deliver the growth they promised. What do you think happens to Unrivaled? Does the WNBA step in and save them by making them part of the official ecosystem? Does Project B launch successfully and completely destroy Unrivaled's business model? Or does Unrivaled somehow find a way to survive as an independent league despite losing the star power war and the format preference battle? Drop your predictions in the comments because I want to know what you think is going to happen. And if you want to see how this story develops over the next few months, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications because this situation is going to get a lot more dramatic before it gets resolved.